Canada and the United States will join forces. Money will change all across the board, the system that is being used. We have got new moons, full moons, Mercury retrograde. We have one Venus retrograde and the ending of a Mars retrograde. And this means that we're going to start to begin to see peace, but it doesn't come without a price. Yes, you're listening to Holly from Askhollyhall.com. I am your modern yet ancient astrologer that is also a life coach with all kinds of modalities, including psychology, neurolinguistic programming, etc. And we are going to talk about the predictions for 2025. Hang on to your boots. What's happening in January? Now we have our full moon starting in January, and that will be in the 13th, and our new moon will be on the 29th. They typically last about 2.5 days. But what I like right away is that Mars is in retrograde, and Mars is going to be trining Uranus. And that's from January 20th to January 30th. Now, what does that mean? Well, I'm going to tell you what it means for Canada and what it means for the United States. And I'm also going to tell you what it means personally as well, because you guys are from everywhere around the world, right? I just don't have the time, nor do you probably want to spend the time listening to me talk about every single country. That there is going to be an ending, sort of a ceasefire on what I'm predicting to be 3 separate wars. We know what's going on with Ukraine. We know what's going on with Gaza, but there's a third one as well that people aren't familiar with. And this is going to create freedom amongst these countries. And that's going to be between January 20th and January 30th. Now, remember, I'm your Canadian astrologer, and I really do not follow politics in detail. I do have my favorite things that I'm interested in seeing fixed in the world. But I think that's more of an ethical humanitarian construct. So what I'm seeing is because Uranus is going through, it's actually going to be leaving the 6th house in the United States chart and in the Canadian chart. And there is what I'm seeing is, because this affects the workforce, when Uranus is leaving the 6th house, which is the house of employees, and also in the workforce, and somewhat the healthcare system, but this is more has to do with nutrition and naturopathic food, the food industry around healthcare. So we're going to see a sudden change in 2 areas of the workforce in Canada and in the United States. This has been ramping up for a while in the United States because Uranus is about to leave the 6th house. And with the Canadian chart, Uranus is just entered into it. So we're a little bit behind. Many of the large corporations in the food industry are going to, the law is going to be laid down, and it's going to shut a lot of them down. And they're going to shut down because they won't be able to afford to continue with the changes, or they have to shut down, claim bankruptcy, and start back up again under the new rules. This is going to be a bit detrimental for the workforce because there's going to be a ton of people out of work all of a sudden. This is where I see that there might be a bit of a recession. I'm also seeing in Canada, they're going to follow suit as well. Now, when Uranus has to do with leaving and fleeing in other countries and changes as well. In a personal chart, if I saw Uranus in the 6th house, I would be telling somebody that they may be going to another country to seek work. And that's what I see happening, is there may also be a law or a regulation, and this is handed down in the United States by the government to leave the country. There's going to be a lot of deportation. I see this happening with Canada as well, except for it's for different reasons, but it still affects the workforce dramatically. So the good news is you're going to feel like all of a sudden jobs, especially in the United States and Canada, that's not going to be affected. The changes in the food industry, not quite yet. It's not going to affect the workforce. However, all of a sudden there's jobs opened up. Other jobs are opened up. So people will be losing jobs in one place, but there will be options for jobs in a sector that's growing because suddenly there's a bunch of people who've left the country for whatever reason. And so there's jobs opening up. That's what I'm seeing. It is a trine. So this is favorable. As much as it's going to It's going to be such chaos immediately, such an immediate turning point for both countries. And this does affect other countries wherever the people are fleeing or leaving or being told to leave too. I don't quite know. Uranus is unpredictable. Now we move into March, and you're gonna be like, what's going on? We've got Mars in retrograde up until January 30th, so we're okay with that. February, there isn't really a lot of action happening, except that Mars is still in retrograde from January all the way until mid-February. So I believe that's going to be the cleanup of what happens in January. There's going to be a lot of recalibration, rearranging. They're prepared for this, and Canada's prepared for this as well. I believe that a lot of people are going to start questioning what's going on with Canada. Why are they such an alignment with the United States? Is Canada going to be the 51st or the 52nd state? They say the 51st and the 52nd state. I've always said that Alberta was going to move there. I've said that for a while because of the resources. I do believe there's going to be an easing into this. I believe there's going to be massive amount of handshakes between Canada and the United States where they can join forces and resources as well. We'll be able to move back and forth at par. The dollar will slowly change, but not quite yet. I actually don't see the dollar making a complete change until November across the globe. But I believe that Canada and the United States, when they join forces, is going to be the leading part of that. In March 30th to the 31st, moving into April, we see there's so many great wows happening, you guys. You got to hang in there. We see Saturn trining Uranus. And this means that there's going to be a divide at that time. So there's going to be structure and rules and laws and obligations. And in the United States, that's going to be still around corporations and the workforce, huge corporations. There's only about 5, I think, with the food industry. Those are the ones that are going to be, they're going to be labeled and indoctrinated with very serious changes that have to be made. For instance, let's say red dye. They're going to be no more red dye, no more. And you know where red dye comes from? It comes from this parasitic beetle that they crush, and it goes like blood red, and that's our dye. It's like so gross, but it comes in all different forms, and many people are allergic to it, have severe allergic reactions to it on different levels. I believe that's one of the ones that are going to come down. The other one is the barbus. I want to say barbicide. I don't know, but it's an ingredient that gives a longer shelf life for a flour. That's also going to be taken away and become illegal. And you have no idea how many foods are using these products in the making of so many different foods. So all these foods are going to be ripped off the shelf. Now, this is going to be very detrimental as well to the grocery industry. Just think about it. They're going to have all of this food that's just going to be garbage. Where is it going to go? Well, yeah, we can give it to the poor people. Why not? Who knows what's going to happen with that, right? People might protest against that too. It's poison for us, but it's not poison for them. Uh, it's such a sudden, unexpected change, and that's what we're going to see the implementation of it between April 5th and the 22nd. And this is where the divide goes. There's actually going to be almost like an underground, when we had prohibition and there were underground speakeasies for you to find alcohol that was supposed to be so bad for us. And it's bad for us. I still like my wine, but it's bad. And, we'll be able to have these underground smuggling Skittles, Mars bars, and Wonder Bread, Fruit Loops. I know, crazy. That's what it's going to be. And then in mid-March, we've got Mercury goes into retrograde, and that goes from mid-March the 15th to April the 7th. Well, Mercury is in retrograde. We're going to start taking a look. That's when AI is going to take over a couple of the industries that are going to be quite serious. And I see that with the car industry. Okay. And it changes the trajectory of not only the car industry, but also with the phone, the computer, and the internet. And that's the one I want to focus on more because I don't think everyone's still going to hang on to their older cars. So I don't see the AI coming out in the car industry is going to make a massive difference immediately. Still be, all types of other things that we're used to right now. It will just be honest and no manipulation. And you choose. I don't believe everybody's going to be on board with it at first. They'll be a little bit nervous, rather the devil I know than the devil I don't know. But if you think about it, how long has computers and cell phones been around? Not that long. So who cares if we change it up a bit? And so these stores will be popping up all over the place, and there'll be people calling you saying, "Hey, do you want to buy this computer slash phone slash internet system that is completely separate from the grid, from the matrix in which we are right now?" And some of you may be very, very afraid of it, that, oh, this is just another ploy to manipulate us. But I don't see it as that way at all. The technology is groundbreaking. I don't even know what it is right now because it's the planet Uranus as well. Venus goes into retrograde. So what I'm saying with Mars, with Mercury being in retrograde up until April 7th, is all these new ingenious businesses are going to form from this new technology that would be coming out. Uh, is there going to be a battle against it? Absolutely. And we're going to see that throughout the entire year. But wow, wow, wow. That's going to be very strong between June 11th and the 18th. There's going to be a retaliation. In fact, so much so that I believe that starting in June, between the 11th and the 18th, is the corruption of trying to bring down two major political entities, and one is American, one is Canadian, and then one is in the Europe, which is I'm seeing it to be Russia as well. It is not so favorable for everyone because we're not going to know who to trust. That's what it's going to come down to. Between June 11th and the 18th, there's just going to be this war. We think that, the American Trump is shaking hands with all of these other countries, and then he kind of throws in a monkey wrench into it. And they're like, wait, we didn't sign up for that. And that's what I see happening. So it is going to be putting a big mistrust against the American politics. And that's going to have the whole world up in arms. Now, who do we trust? We thought you were making friends, and now you're making enemies. But just before that, which is June, the 3rd and the 5th, this is a very small window of time. That's where I see the beginning of the shift and the change around money and finances. And that may be where I see more of a shaking hands between the United States and Canada, and them negotiating, what are we going to do with healthcare system? What are we going to do with our tax system? What are we going to do with the dollar? Because a lot of you Americans may not know, but our dollar, it sucks. Huge connection, about 3 or 4 to 5 planets in July. July, there's something about institutions and religion. And this is with Neptune in the United States. This has to do, yeah, this has to do with the educational system and religion and spiritual. Okay. Not necessarily like woo woo spiritual, but just spiritualism in the education system. That's where we're going to start seeing a change. And then, slowly it's going to move into, which we're looking at April to June. Then in Canada, Neptune's in the second house. So there's a real struggle around what are we going to do with our financial stability. And again, that has to do with the shaking of the hands with our neighbors, the United States, and people really up in arms around that and quite upset. And to me, it logically won't make sense because it means that we'll be at par. Do you remember there was a time when our money was at par? It was the same. I remember that. It's going to go back to that, but so many people have made foreign investments. And again, I'm probably using the wrong lingo because these are downloads that I receive. And sometimes I'm like, what are you talking about? I don't understand that. But somehow foreign investments, maybe they bought the American dollar hoping it was going to, make the money, or it was making the money. But anyways, it crashes a lot of people's investments that were based outside of Canada. So that's where Canada is going to be kind of in a conundrum around it. Now, what are we going to do? This isn't fair. However, we're going to get through it. In July and August, we've got Mercury goes into retrograde again. And I'm seeing from there's going to be a lead up in the news in July and August, a slandering around, again, three important political figures that are going to be charged with criminal activity. One of them is in Canada. I'm not going to say who because then I'll be considered biased, and I'm not. One of them is in the United States. Two are actually in the United States, but one of them doesn't live in the United States anymore. I do believe one of them is going to be Trump. I'm going to say that much. And regardless, this is going to be the forefront. And then the lead in into all of November. Okay. All of November is when it's going to be very quick and quite fast, believe it or not. It's not going to be long-winded. And I actually think a couple of them are going to be thrown out of court immediately. And one of them will lead to an arrest or being taken out of the system that they're in. The event, I can say it's criminal court. I can say that there's, this is where it's all going to be announced and in general. But if I try to say exactly who it is and what the crime was, that detail can throw everything off. And then people don't actually see the big picture of it, if that makes sense. And in November is where I see the change globally around money. It's almost like they're trying, how they did it with the euro? That's the download I'm getting, which is a euro. And that took a while. That took a while to gain traction and implement and the changes. And I don't even live in Europe. I can't imagine. But now that's like old news, right? That's kind of what it's going to be across the world. It's a BRIC system. There's a whole bunch of other countries added to it, including Hungary. And they're just going to make that announcement and actually make the changes at that time, which will be very beneficial for all of the countries involved. And to be honest, astrologically, this is saying that it's a good thing. It really is. It's saying that it's like the dream team of how money is going to be utilized throughout the states. But logically, I'm thinking, does it really? I mean, cash is king, gold is gold. But cash and gold separated in the 60s, I believe, in the 50s and the 60s. Cash was no longer associated with a gold brick. So does it really matter? I'll leave that one up to you.